Hey, what's up, guys? So I've gotten a couple requests to do like a budget PvP unit video and like what units that I think are good and can be used in PvP even up into the later stages, like up in the champion and maybe legend, or can be very useful in Guild Wars. So I'm gonna go over some of those units real quick to kind of give you guys an idea, and I'll kind of start with who I think is the best and work my way down from there. And I think the absolute best free-to-play PvP unit right now is this chick right here. She's incredible. There's a couple guides on YouTube and unit reviews. I would recommend TK Gallant literally just did a review of Angelic Montmorency, so if you want to know how to build her, just pop over to his video and check that out. But she's incredible. I use her a lot now. I pretty much stripped my Destina in favor of using her. I use her in PvE now instead of Angelica. So if you have Montmorency, do her specialty change and build her. You will not regret it. She's useful everywhere. Like, period. I would say second best is probably Roozid. I used him for a while. I don't really use him right now because I don't really do like speed stuff. But I used him quite a bit in Challenger. So if you're like in that area, and especially if you have a Sid, like investing a little bit into Roozid and using Sid with him is not a bad, combo. You could even use that in Guild War as well and be pretty successful with that early on. So I would probably rate Roozid at number 2. And then number 3, like this might surprise people, but I don't think it'll surprise many people, but it's still Falconer Kluri. Like, I've never used her, but she's still good. She's solid on defense still, with certain comps. She's something you kind of have to play around. She's very good on offense, too. She's a good bait unit if you have her tanky. She's pretty good. If you're kind of stingy and like, oh, well, I don't have a lot of good 5 stars and I don't know who I should build, like, she's still a good unit to build, even after her nerf. And those, I think, are really the top 3. I don't want to go into MLs too much, but, like, some people might pull an ML 3-star, and think, oh, well, crap. Commander Lorina is free to play, and she's actually decent in PvP. Like, if you can build a team around her, like, using her with Falconer Kluri, for example, like, you could do some work in PvP with that. Like, if you can build your Falconer Kluri fast enough and build your Commander Lorina like more of a bruiser, like, of course you have to work on these skill trees. You cannot use these units to their full potential without maxing out their skill trees. I mean, there's a couple things you could ignore, but I would recommend just maxing out their skill trees before you really try to go in on them, and maybe MOLA investment. But however, they mentioned that like we might get a different skill enhanced currency for 3 stars, but like one of my friends hit legend with using Lorina, so I know she can be used in PvP and can be used well, but you have to use her with a specific kind of team. So she's good. Like, if you're really struggling with a single target damage, like, Lorina is still very relevant. So I'll mention her, and the reason I mention her is because she is a connection hero. She is free. If you happen to pull Axe God, he's very good investment too. He's very strong in PvP. Still, maybe not so much like using pure 3 stars. Like, you could probably hit legend, but you're not going to stay there. It's just not going to happen. There's too many whale teams and ML5s. It's like you're not going to be able to compete at the legend level, but I do think you can get to champion with 3 stars. It's not a challenge I'm personally going to do. I would rather you guys do that, because I don't know, that's a lot of work to really invest into something. But we just got 2 free 5-star tickets, so you're gonna have some kind of 5-star support to go with some of these heroes. So those are like the main ones for 3 stars. I mean, if you scroll up through here, like, I've ran into a Jet on a defense team in champion that was really fast, and he gave his whole team speed buff, and it was kind of annoying. So he's usable, I don't know if I'd recommend that. Of course, Herado's still good. I still haven't pulled one. Gloomy Rain is good. Celeste is great, but usually she's really good with C-Dom. So if you have C-Dom, you can definitely run C-Dom Celeste. I've seen Wanda used. She's okay. Doris, I think she can be used, but her biggest issue is her base speed is so low. Like, she's just not fast enough. I mean, you could build Doris and use her as a PvP healer if you wanted to, but you'd probably have to invest into her a little bit more. Who else? I've actually seen a Mukacha do good. I know he got nerfed a long time ago, but I still ran into one in Challenger that was hitting pretty hard. Sven is actually really great. Like, if you use him on certain teams, then he can put in work for you. If you want to invest some skill enhance in him, he can be used as a bait unit like Kayron, so he's good in that regard. And then that's really it here. Like, you can use Ras and you can use Phyllis as well if you have Ras or Phyllis, and if you have Judith as well, of course she's still pretty good. I'm running in the Judith in Legend now, which is pretty crazy. But Ras can be good. You got to use him with a certain kind of team and kind of take advantage of his skill too. And he needs good gear. Like, all these guys are going to need good gear if you really want to use them for PvP successfully. I didn't mention Mascot Hazel. She's good too. I just don't like how she's more of an attack scaling healer. That makes her squishier. So that kind of sucks about her. But if you have a main damage, like if you have a Kin, building Hazel's not a bad idea. If you have Kayron, building her's not a bad idea. Like, she'll help out in some situations. It's kind of pop up into 4 stars. I'm not going to go over 4-star MLs. Like, people know what 4-star MLs are good. I'll kind of go up and talk about some of these other 4 stars up here. Surin's good for speed imprint. I wouldn't recommend using her for anything else. Rin's good. Like, pretty much any Soul Weaver can be used at this point in the game. Like, if you haven't built well, like, Acades can be a replacement for Destina to cleanse your team. So, she's good in that regard, but you're going to want to build her high resist. And it's nice because she has low cooldown, so she can constantly cleanse your team. She's actually a good counter for Dizzy if you ever built well. Shuri's good for an initial, start of the turn, combat readiness push. She's good for that, and he's got a speed imprint. Maya's actually not bad. She's got a defense buff. So, and an AoE provoke, like, she can be pretty good. Like, even if you're running her on offense and you want to, like, get some tankiness on your team, like, say you're lower tier and there's a Luna or something on the other team, or a Kisei that you kind of want to bait the damage from, like, Maya could be used for that. And she could be used in Guild War too. And defense buff is really good, especially if the other team doesn't have any kind of strip threat. And you can actually sit there on that defense buff. It makes a big difference. Crozet can be used. Like, most 4 stars can be used in PvP pretty well. Like, even Collie's pretty good. I'm not sure what her base speed is. 111, that's not terrible. Her base attack's not bad either. She's a little squishy, so you'd want to build her fast, and she could pretty much disable a unit. So, like, if you have Collie and you kind of want to build her for PvP, like, a lot of these units, I think, if you have them built well and you use good team synergy and you have decent gear from a lot of farming, you can push champion with free-to-play, no problem, I think. You'll run into some cancer stuff, but if you can manage to get yourself a Kluri that's like 230 speed and like an Acades that's around 150 resistance and decently fast that you can get going before your team, like, you could disable a threat with Kluri, no problem, if you have the effectiveness to support that. And then you can run a high single target damage like Lorina, like Sid, like Collie, anything like that. Karn, even. Karn's actually amazing. So you could run a lot of these units depending on what you're going up against, and you can climb. Lots is great for turn rotations. So, like, say you have a slow built Lorina, like, you could literally run like Lots, Lorina. Ideally, you'd probably want some kind of attack buff, but if you're hitting a defense break, you don't really need one. Unless there's like a C-Arm in there. I don't know how many C-Armins you're going to run into in Guild War. Usually you don't see them that often, but like, you can run Kluri, Lots, Lorina, in Guild War offense and probably beat a good amount of teams, unless you're like up in the top 20. But you could probably run that against some of the teams up there too. So you definitely have some options you can run with just regular 4 stars and some 3 stars. Mainly the specialty changes. Like if you guys are hardcore free to play, you're not pulling really good units, invest heavy into some of these specialty changes, and you'll see some success in your PvP capabilities. The only ones I really wouldn't recommend trying to use here out of these is maybe like all of them can be usable with investments, but I still wouldn't use like Mercedes. I know she got a damage buff recently, but her base speed is really low. If you want to try cleaving with Mercedes, like it's just not a really good idea because there's too many water units all through, literally master through legend. There's Deanne's, Angelicas, Montmorency's, Crows, you know. Sometimes you see a Tywin. There's just too many relevant ice units for a fire cleave to work. You can probably manage it with a Kayron. Like, you get a greater attack buff on a fire unit, you could probably, like, fire's the only one that gets a greater attack buff right now from Hazel, so maybe that's a good thing. So you could try and cleave with a fire unit. I just wouldn't recommend it, really. Armin's another iffy character. I've never really, like, analyzed her before because I always imprint her. Are you gonna... There it goes. Yeah, her base speed is terrible. So, doesn't this give a barrier? Yeah, so, being that slow... I guess it recovers health, too, but... she doesn't really do anything. Yeah, she's just bad. I wouldn't invest into Armin. She needs a buff. Same thing with Zerato. He really doesn't do much. Karin's great. Corvus is top tier. Cartuja, I tested him out. I wouldn't recommend building him. Sid is... I wouldn't say he's top tier, but he's great. Acades is great. Shuri's great. Dingo can be used. Like, say you don't... You have this guy and he's just sitting there, but you don't have any kind of cleanser. Like, you should probably build your Dingo. There's Dizzies everywhere, guys. And you guys want to know how to deal with Dizzy? Build this guy. Throw Strax on him. Use Kluri. You know? There's free-to-play options to deal with Dizzy. At least up until you get into the higher ranks. The higher ranks, you're just not going to deal with stuff unless you have, you know, either gear on par with him or units on par with him. It's got to be one of the two. So you can't expect to be like, oh, I'm going to build this hero and then I'm going to hit legend. It's not going to work that way. You got to put in some work. Excuse me. Clarissa's is still good cleave, I think, if you want to build a cleave. But to be honest, if you want to be more consistent in PvP, like, the longer the game progresses, the weaker cleaves are going to get, unless they nerf Crimson Armin. But people are going to constantly be getting better gear, and this is through all ranks of PvP. Like, you start the game, you see Bronze 5 players that are all 6 stars. So, literally, the more the game progresses, the more difficult PvP is going to get. So you have to, like, I think investing into heroes that serve a single purpose, like... build a good cleanser, build a stripper, you know, have all these units, have a high single target damage, build those specialty changes. They're literally useful through all stages of the game. Do that, you know, get your bait units for every element. Like, even out of just 4 stars here, if you're forced to do one of each element, you got Cartuja, Maya, and Crozet here that are all bait units just fine. So... you could do all those. You can even build Purgus. Like, you could try some niche stuff, but if you want to just be successful, the best thing I can recommend is build Montmorency, build Kluri. You don't necessarily have to build Lorina. It really depends on your roster. If you have no high single target damage units at all, she's not a bad build, and she's free. Yeah, it takes a lot of effort, but if you want to be successful, then that's what you're going to need to do. And she's neutral element, so she's good across the board. Like, if I was to do the ultimate free-to-play PvP team that I think would be very successful, it would be some variation of... like, it would definitely include Kluri, probably Montmorency, and then I would have some kind of high single target damage, to deal with whatever threat there is, and I'll defense break it with Kluri, unless it's a fire unit. But there's not many fire units that are relevant, that are threats on defense, unless you're running like Kayron. But even then, you just bait Kayron into something, and then you have Montmorency to keep your team up. So, Kluri, Montmorency, some kind of high single target damage. You can have different ones built based on what you're going up against, but I would recommend trying a neutral element one. So Lorina is actually not a bad, like this for the ultimate free-to-play PvP team. It would be Kluri, Montmorency, Lorina, and then the last unit would probably be something that can hold aggro on whatever is on the other team that I think is the biggest threat. So if I had like just a fire Corvus, for example, and they had some kind of Kisei or something on the other team, and I wanted to, like, even if they had Kisei, like, wouldn't be a big deal because I have a fast Kluri. So if there was something, like ML Araminta, even getting a taunt off on Araminta is so good. Like, she does an S3, and then you still have cleanses there anyways for the high resist Montmorency. So, like, ideally, it's really just those 3 units I would build. And then the last slot is just kind of up based on what's in your roster. You can run some kind of CR push. You can run an Arius holder. You can run a secondary healer. You can run a secondary DPS. It just really depends on what you're fighting against. But if you want to be successful free-to-play PvP, that's what I recommend doing, is build the specialty changes. If you don't have a certain unit from specialty change, hold your mystics, wait until he's in the mystic pool, and then pull him. That's the best advice I can give. Let's look at artifacts real quick. Go through some 4-star artifacts that are good. Jeez, I'm missing a lot of 5-star artifacts here. Tagahels, max 1 out. Caladra can be good, but if you're doing like a free-to-play kind of thing and you don't have any like good mage cleave, there's really none at low levels, unless you pull like Celestial Mercedes or even Guider Aether maybe, but wouldn't recommend leveling that. Siren's very good on AoE mages. Like if you don't have a Dizzy, like I don't even know who else you would use it on. Maybe Roman. I didn't talk about Roman, but Roman's pretty good for a stripper. Like I said, you need to build a stripper, so Roman is definitely an option. His base speed's not completely terrible. If you run him with just like a speed imprint, like you can probably get rid of those immunity buffs. You could easily push him up to 230 if you have good enough speed gear. Ayala's is great if you don't have it, rip. Arius, definitely max one of those out. It's very good to have. Adamant Shield is good too. If you're in a situation where you're running 2 knights, you can run Arius and Adamant Shield and essentially have a budget Crimson Arm in there. Hillag's great to have too, if you want, like, Hillag can be good on Kluri. Like, any of these artifacts can be good on Kluri. El's Fist is good for... I wouldn't recommend using it in a situation where you know you're not taking damage. But if you're using, like, some kind of bruiser, like if you have a Corvus that's taking damage and you built him more like a bruiser, pretty high defense, lower speed, that could work on him. Hellcutter's one of the best 4-star artifacts in the game. People kind of sleep on it, but this makes up for lost crit. If you have it, like your Bruiser Warrior or whatever going last in your rotation, that's a lot of extra damage he gets there. Or she gets there. Strax is incredible. I sold so many of those when I started playing the game, and I regret it still. I only have 3 right now. So it's great. Crimson Seed's in the thing right now. I would recommend maxing out one of those at least. Dream Blade's great to have. It mitigates damage. Gives free attack buff. Elia's Knife is more for a cleaver. So if you were lucky enough to pull BBK or something like that, that's where that's really, really good. But Dust Devil, I recommend, like, if you have a unit that doesn't have a skill 2, like it has a passive, like Sid or Assassin Coley, I'm not sure if... Let me double check Coley real quick. Oh, why'd I go back? I'm pretty sure she has a skill 2. I don't know if it's a passive or not. It might be a passive. Okay. Let's go back in here. Where's she at? Oh, she does have a skill too. Okay, yeah. So, like, really, Dust Devils for, like, Sid. You know, units like that. Units that have passives. Arbiter Vildred. Hell, regular Vildred, if you have him. And you're using him, like, more, like, not to cleave with, but more as, like, a bruiser. Or to chip something down, then that's where you would use Dust Devil in those situations. Even maybe Says, too. If you're using them not to cleave, you know, using them as a single target damager. Dust Devil's pretty good. Back to artifacts. Water's Origin is great. Max one out. That's all I can really say. So, same Wanderer's Potion. Like, really, you should max out one of every 4-star artifact. They're all good. They're all used in certain situations. And, like, the only one that sucks is this one. But that's what it is. I didn't talk about many Rangers because there's not many good ones. So, if your focus is PvP, then I wouldn't worry about maxing out these Ranger artifacts unless you have, like, Celeste. If you're lucky enough to pull Bologna, she can be used. She kind of falls off later in the ranks, but she can definitely be used. But basically, free to play, I would recommend stay away from cleaves. Everyone wants to win Arena so fast, but if you want a consistent win rate, build those units that can do that team. So, yeah, do your specialty changes. Like, I don't know how many times I could say that. Then for 3-star artifacts, you can definitely use Ancient Seath is pretty good. Prophetic's good. Let's see. Labyrinth Cube is niche, but it's good. Curse Compass can be used on Kluri, for example. If you have her built fast and you're lacking effectiveness, you can use it in that situation. Tonfa is good if you don't have any porch crits. Joker's really for PvE. It's great, but not really useful in PvP. Oath Key, it's good to have one of those at plus 15 for Fat Cat teams on your main DPS. Invoice Pipe can be used. Egg of Delusion can be used. Timeless Anchor's not bad either. Forest Totem's good if you can, like, you can throw that on a bait unit. Like, I have 2 Forest Totems maxed out. I'm not using them right now, but they're there just in case. And then, I think this thing can be used too. But, it's very niche. 8% is too small for that to really make a difference. So, yeah, that's kind of my quick free-to-play guide on PvP. Sorry I'm not really showing any gameplay and I'm really just talking. That's kind of how I do most of my videos. But, of course, you can swap in any 5-star hero you might have pulled in there. See, I got quite a few. I like how, like, what the hell? Notice how all of the MLs are chilling down here, and then there's a random Destina down there in the corner. That's weird. But yeah, so if this helped you out, let me know in the comments. And if it did, you know, toss me a like, I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, let me know. You guys have a good one. Later.